Howdy, everyone. Hope everybody's having a lovely Easter weekend. And let's dive into the TA. All right, guys. So we're going to kick it off here with SPX. And I am just going to point out the weekly RSI, guys. We did already start bouncing off of that oversold territory down there. If you just look back throughout time, you don't dance around here. And if you do get what we did over here and then you come down to make a new low, it's very likely going to just put in something like this, a bullish divergence after making a marginal new low, and then you end up getting your rally. I am not going to say that's going to happen, but we have big tech earnings going on right now. So, I think the most probable scenario is the market's probably not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. I think over the next 1 to 2 months, we have a solid shot at just consolidating here in this range. And I need everyone just to be, okay with that. You don't have to like that, but it's important that you are okay with that because that is likely what is going to happen. Right now, everything that we can, focus on here on this channel that I personally focus on, everything's under the weekly 21 EMAs. When that is the case, it is not a time to focus on longs. We have already fallen off a cliff here, so I'm going to say it's not exactly the time to, focus on shorts either. If you want to focus on the short side, a ticker that I would be focused on is over here on Meta. I think Meta is probably going to be coming down, making new lows over the next 1 to 2 weeks, no matter what the market is doing. Why? All right, it looks extremely weak. We clearly can tell it has relative weakness compared to the overall market. All right, but you had last week's bullish candlestick right up into the short-term moving average over here in the weekly time frame, and you faded. You came right back down. Now you're just hanging on by a thread over there. So trade idea going into next week, short idea. All right, if you end up bouncing into this 518 to 530 zone up here, it should act as supply. It was acting as demand. You felt you lost it, and now it very likely is going to be filled with sell orders sitting up here. All right, so if you do retest 518 to 530, expect sellers there, and then if you get back underneath 495.60, at that point you're likely just going to come down under 480 and make a new low. All right, so either you're playing for the break and retest off that 518 530 zone right there, should act as supply, or you're playing for the break underneath 495.60, and from there you're probably just going to make a straight shot down to 481.90, which is the current low that we just put in not too long ago. From that point, guys, you're probably re-entering this area down here, which is anywhere from 440 all the way up into 470. That is what you are watching over here on the short side. That is my trade idea going into the following week if you are going to be focusing on shorts. But, coming back over here to the S&P 500, I just want to point out, guys, we're in an area right now where you can short over here, okay? If you start losing where we were bouncing off of, you're probably coming down to this next area, okay? So this is a key spot. But if you lose that, you're probably just going to be making a new low. And on the weekly time frame, we already have fallen off a cliff here. Okay, so if you are chasing shorts, if you're trying to just buy the falling knife, I don't think it's a good situation for either. Okay, which is why I'm just going to highlight, guys, if you can trade intraday, I know people have jobs and I understand that, but if you can, take your money, get in and out. Okay, get in and out. If you need help with that, I will be live trading. You can use code Easter for 50% off your first payment. Link will be down below. But I will guide you through these markets if you are struggling to do so. All right. But as far as I'm concerned, guys, we have VIX over here looking like it could go either way. We closed out pretty bearishly over here on Friday. You're losing the short-term moving average over here, getting underneath the 21. You came up, retested it, and then you are, coming back down. If you lose 28.32, VIX is probably going to continue crushing over here. But at the same time, you want to come over to SPY, and, this is also in a vulnerable position, okay? So let's just go over support and resistance here. If you do end up losing 520.29 this week, watch for a move down to 510.27. Now, from here, we're going to have the golden pocket, guys, with big tech earnings coming in, these upcoming 2 weeks. We kicked it off. We kicked it off on Thursday after the close with Netflix earnings. Going into this week, but we are going to have a good amount of tech earnings this week, and then we finish it off next week. All right. So, it's a recipe for chop. If you didn't like the chop that we got throughout this last week, just realize we have that same exact recipe here, and we're not going to know which direction it's going to give us until after earnings season. Okay, just take a chart like Tesla, for instance. Look at the weekly time frame over here. It's a mess for both sides. You know you don't want to be long in this thing because it's clearly not in an uptrend. It's clearly, consolidating over here near, lows before you end up rocking in there. It's not a spot to be long and it's not a spot to be shorting. Okay. And then you combine that with earnings. Guess what? Premiums are pumped. Nobody knows which way this thing's about to go. It's set up for upside here, but at the same time, if it loses to 1702 over here, the thing goes kapooey down to 180 to 200. So, I will just reiterate what I was saying at the very beginning of the video there. It is not a time for either side right now. You don't have probabilities on either direction. So just keep that in mind when trading. If you can keep it to short-term trades, that is going to be preferable. That is just for you, for me, for every trader in this market. Okay, swinging right now into earnings season especially is not the best idea. It is not. Okay. But let's come back over here to SPY. On the downside, guys, we're going to be watching 524.98, 520.29, 510.27, and then you're going to have the handy dandy golden pocket here. 507.40 all the way down to 496. If 496 can't hold, we're coming back down to 480. All right. So it is the market where you're going to be trading level to level. That is preferable. On the upside, we are going to have 529.71, 533.50. 536.81, and then we have our supply zone up there at 542.58 to 544.28. Now, even if you come up here, I'm going to say the same thing we did coming into to last week there. We were slamming right up into resistance. Key resistance going to be 550, SPY 550. All right. But if you come back up and you retest that, I'm just going to say right here, this was the higher low scenario that we were paying attention to. All right, specifically over here, on ES, on NQ over there, I didn't check these charts yet this week. We're about to go over that and, create a game plan over here for NQ and ES. But, it was picture perfect last week. We got the break and retest off of 351 up here, and then we started breaking down. We got the same exact setup over here. All right, you hit it with the break and retest, and then you started slamming down. But this is exactly where, like, this area, 257 to 206, like, this is where buyers had to step in here for your higher low. We are now set up for either scenario here. Okay, so like, don't come into this week with a bias. You have big tech earnings. You have weekly and daily charts looking vulnerable in both directions here. We know if price is to come back above here and break above 544.28, then yeah, this is being confirmed as your higher low. You're going to be above the 21 EMA here. I know you have 550 resistance, but at that point, I'm going to say screw the 550 resistance. We're probably coming up to 560 plus. Okay, so that's the game plan over here on SPY. If you can make it back above here, I know you're going to have that key resistance right here. But at the same time, all right, you rejected, you come back up here and you make the higher high over here and higher low over there. Yeah, it's very likely that you're just going to continue moving up, all right? But at the end of the day, it is going to be one of these big tech earnings that's likely to give us that move if it's going to come. And that means you have to take a bet, going like a gamble going into it if you're going to catch it, which that is what I was saying. I don't think it's worth catching it. Just sit on your hands right now, preserve your capital, okay? Use tight risk management in this market. And that's the key to success right now, okay? You're going to have an easier market to swing. Right now, I'm telling you, short swing, long swing, it doesn't matter what you want to do, all right? It can go either way on you, and you got to accept that as a trader, all right? So that's SPY. We're going to kick it over here with QQQ, all right? And we're actually going to come down to the hourly time frame. We'll go down to the 4-hour time frame there, all right? So your support over here is going to be 443.06. If you lose 443.06, we're talking 437.76, 432.63, and then you're going to have 423.45. Now that is going to be down where we have this golden pocket, our handy dandy golden pocket. So if you do not hold 423.45, it's looking hairy. Okay. And then let's say underneath 423.45, you take out 414.50. From that point, I know you got this, you got big support over here at 408.71. That tells you if you break under here, the odds are you're going to take out this low over here and you're going to come down to 387.98. All right, that low is currently sitting all the way down there at 400. All right, so underneath 414.50, you got a straight shot likely down to 400, and you're probably going to break it, make the marginal new low towards 387.98. Now, on the upside, what are you paying attention to? You got 447.75. Above there, you have 452.63, 455.59, 460.07, 462.38. And then you have our supply zone up here, 466.43 to 468.41. We'll just point out the same exact look you got over here as SPY on the daily time frame. All right. If you do end up taking out, like I know you're going to slam into resistance here, but if you do end up getting back up here and you take out this high right here, okay, you take it out. This is going to be your higher low. You're likely going to start moving up here towards 485.84. That's why we got that alert sent up there. Okay. But you know, first things first, you got to get above this area. This whole area right here, this is where you got to get above. And if you do, you're going to be above the 21. You're going to be confirming this as the higher low into a higher high. You are probably going to have a bit of a larger move here up to 485.84, maybe 490. Okay, so that's what we're watching over there on QQQ, downside and upside. That is it. Now, just keep in mind, VIX is telling you right now, you're at a pivotal spot. You can literally go either way. You're still above the short-term moving average over here on the weekly time frame, but you're losing over here on the daily time frame. You're coming into that important 28.32 spot. So, you know, just realize you don't have the edge in either direction. If you are swinging this market going into these big tech earnings, we're definitely set up to go either direction, and you need to be aware of that. You need to be okay with that, because if not, you could put yourself, yeah, you can get rich overnight in these big tech earnings market, okay? You can, but I'm telling you, it is more probable that you are going to go bust than going boom if you are gambling into big tech earnings. It's just not something you want to be doing. All right, even something over here on Netflix, okay? You know, Netflix, I know it moved up, and you're probably going to be coming up to the highs, okay? But at the end of the day, did you get a big enough move to actually, you know, justify the premiums you were paying? No. All right, even though you moved up, guess what? It's no 10 to 20% move. So premiums, call premiums, I mean, put premiums, call premiums, they're already going to get crushed if you don't get that big move. All right. But, you know, even calls over here, you got the directional move, you're going to get smoked. Okay. So that is going to be the theme coming into this week. All right. I'll give you a long idea over here on Apple, guys. So I gave you your short is going to be Meta for the week. That is going to be the short focus. That is clear as day, the weakest one out of all the Mag 7 stocks. Doesn't really matter what the market does. I think that is probably going to be making new lows with how that weekly chart is looking. All right, but over here on Apple, now I gave you this one right over here, 194.78. That was the spot for the higher low that we're going to be paying attention to. Now that you have had buyers stepping in there 2 days in a row now, we clearly see it. It's confirmed as that area of interest there, that spot of interest above 198.23 now. Okay, you could get a move up to 201.16 and then 203.51. Now, if you start moving up to 203.51, I'm just going to tell you, you're probably going to take it out and start pushing back up here to 208.42. Why? Because it's very unlikely that, you know, we are going to make the higher low, get an equal high, and then get slammed back down. It's just not something that probably, you know, probabilities aren't going to suggest that. Rather, if you come back up here and you test 203.51, you're probably going to be breaking this 21 right here, and you were going to do that. And then what happens if we take something like this? Okay, your golden pocket is going to be right here around that 208.42 level as well. That's your 0.786 Fibonacci retracement. All right, and there's that. Okay, guys, so that is what I have for you guys in today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope, you know, this is going to help you out this week, because in reality, all right, you don't want to be taking no big bets into these tech earnings. You do not want to be doing so. All right, sit on your hands. You're going to have confirmation after the fact on which direction we are going to be moving in. All right, and on top of that, you have trade plans for both the upside and the downside. You have one of each going into this week, and you know the levels you're watching over there on SPY and QQQ. If you want to come trade live with me every morning, I'll be live from 9:30 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can also get all the trade plans throughout the day as well as live analysis. All right, that link will be down below, 50% off, code Easter. I hope everybody has a lovely Easter today. Spend it with your family. If you don't have the family, just realize, all right, we are here. All right, we are here for you. We are a giant community here on YouTube. All right, if you want to go message me over on Twitter, feel free to do so. All right, but, you know, I understand. With that being said, Appreciate you guys. Have a lovely Easter, and I'll catch you guys on Monday. Peace.